There's no sugarcoating that we live on the coast, and we also have been hit by hurricanes in the past and likely will get hit by them in the future. And so what are we doing as a region and the government to make investments in our capabilities to weather those storms and be prepared for the next one? And so things like coastal barrier protection, which would create a series of protection dunes in the region that would mitigate a storm surge, the way we design our flood mitigation tools, things like that
Welcome everyone to this new edition of our holographic podcast or HoloChat. Today, my guest is Brian. He is the president of BAHEP, Bay Area Houston Economic Partnership. Welcome, Brian, to our show.
Thank you, Fernando. Appreciate you having me. How you doing?
Very good, thank you. So, I met you. You used to work for Boeing. I met you actually at BAHEP, and now you are the president. Well, first of all, what is BAHEP? What's the Bay Area Houston Economic Partnership?
Yep, absolutely. Well, Fernando, first, if I didn't say thank you for your leadership in this community, for doing this podcast, and for having me, I'd be doing a disservice to this community if I didn't start with saying how much we appreciate you and your leadership. And thank you for all your involvement with BAHEP over the years. So our organization is the Bay Area Houston Economic Partnership. And so we do a lot of different things, but first and foremost, we're what's called an economic development organization. And so we work with companies, big and small, to talk to them about what it's like to operate and manage a business here and recruit companies that are from elsewhere who are considering relocation and recruit them into this area. When companies are looking at this in this area, we can help them identify properties or locations where, depending on what kind of business they're in, that we can locate them in a site where it's going to be most conducive to their success. Companies that are already here, we work expansion projects with them and understand the landscape of what their growth looks like and how we can help them with that. And so we get involved in a lot of different ways with projects related to that. We also have about 300 active members of the organization, and so we put on a lot of programs. We have committee meetings that are focused on regional efforts, and we can talk a little bit more about those as we go on. And then we also do some workforce development work and training work for future employees with San Jacinto College. And then lastly, we administer some business assistance programs in partnership with the state of Texas and Texas A&M. All that to say, we do a ton of different stuff. It's a lot of fun. It makes every day dynamic. And if folks at home are not aware of your leadership role in the organization, you served a number of years on our board of directors and on our executive committee. And so the success of the organization in large part to your contributions over the year. And so thank you for that.
So, well, that is amazing. So, as I recall, there are different committees or areas inside BAHEP. I belong to one which is the aerospace, but I believe that you have multiple areas or committees and also multiple projects. Can you please elaborate on that?
So thanks for your service on the Aerospace Committee, and I'd be curious, sort of, as we go through this, for you to kind of share some of your opinions on your experience being a member of these committees. But yeah, when you're looking at a region, and there are all sorts of capabilities of that region and things that we excel at. So if you look at this area, the Bay Area of Houston, and along the Gulf Coast, we have sort of 5 thriving industry clusters: maritime and logistics, aerospace, tourism and recreation, healthcare, specialty, petrochemical, and energy. And so all of those industries have different dynamics and focus areas and things that they're working on and legislative and policy objectives. And so we have a number of committees that help our members work together to advance the region's success in that. I'll give you a couple examples. We have a healthcare committee. We have a thriving medical group of medical hospitals down here, doctors and support staff that go into that. They have large issues with hiring enough nurses, doctors, talking about what capabilities they have that are unique to their hospital system, and so where certain types of patients might go to one hospital or another. And so it allows them to work together collaboratively to, increase the number of people in the medical field, to showcase what opportunities there are for people, and where they can partner and work together to have complementary assets. The Aerospace Committee obviously is focused on keeping NASA healthy, but then also bringing lots of industry into the region on that. The development of the Houston Spaceport, which I understand you met with Arturo Machuca last week and had a great interview with him. And so to work on advancing of his goals. And so we have a host of these different committees that dive into all sorts of different topics. But generally, just to give you some ideas of what they are, we have a medical and aerospace that I mentioned. We have a maritime committee that focuses on shipping issues, but then also the coastal barrier protection effort. We have a political protocol committee. We have a what's called BAHEP Cares, which is a veteran mentor committee, and half a dozen others, all focused on that. And they are all driven by our members. Our objectives and goals are set forth by those committee participants. We act as a forum and a convening organization to help them come together to work on those issues. Ultimately, to have the goal of having this be a prosperous region 10 and 20 years into the future. So it's a lot of fun. We get to do some interesting things and have some interesting projects that come up. Now, Fernando, I'd be remiss if I didn't kind of turn the question back on you. You've been engaged with a number of these committees. You mentioned the Aerospace Advisory Committee. Share that experience with us. How do you like being on that side? What initiatives have you seen us tackle that might have been of value to your business?
That is a great experience. I remember I joined your organization in 2012. First of all, new company, no projects, no networking. In my experience, it was great because I remember my first meeting. I shared a table with C-level directors of the main aerospace companies. I literally can just stop, talk with them, tell them who I am, and share my needs. But also what was very important is for me to understand the landscape. During these meetings, you have like presentations, and they share what's the status of current projects, vision. So as a new company, at least in my case, that was very valuable information to try to tailor my services and provide solutions not only to NASA, but also to these companies. And also it was important because now they know me. I remember that I received an RFI, request for interest, just because they know me. Like, oh, I know you, and maybe this is something that may be of your interest. Now that you talk about projects, and actually talking about Arturo Machuca, my guest in the last episode, your organization helped a lot the spaceport, Houston Spaceport, Ellington. I believe, hopefully, 1 or 2 weeks from now, Intuitive Machines, a company located at the spaceport Ellington, will be in space. And I remember, I believe like maybe 5 years ago, when they came with the idea of a spaceport and just trying to figure it out, and BAHEP was like, yeah, we're here to support you. I remember more initiatives like the one that maybe not part of the committee, but also a way to mitigate more flooding after Harvey. So in my experience, this is a unique organization. And what I want to ask you is why this is different compared to a chamber of commerce. That is, I believe most of the people will make that association. Why this is different from a chamber of commerce?
Yeah, great question. And I think just to make an observation, I think what you saw and what you benefited from in your work on committees is what a lot of folks benefit from, is that what's I think very special about our organization is that we spend our time focused on what are the big issues, the big rocks that are going to make this region successful in 10 and 20 years from now. And so there's broad alignment on some of the big things that we need to go focus on as a region. Coastal barrier protection, success and health of NASA, thriving port, things like that we can all agree and work on and work towards over the years. what you find is a community of sort of like-minded, civic-minded, thoughtful leaders in the region working together. And so being a part of that, you have access into people who share those same things, and you sort of start at hey, we're all working together on this. And so I'm always quick to remind folks, we are not a business development organization in the sense that a member comes to us and we say, hey, we can get you business. We won't make that commitment. But what we find is that through participation in these things, through trying to advance what the community can accomplish, there are a lot of opportunities that pop up. And you outlined that perfectly, that now you know some of the key leaders in the region, and when opportunities pop up, they know you. And so those kind of collaborations I love hearing about, in addition to all the great work we do in supporting NASA and messaging on behalf of the region as it relates to our aerospace capability. So I just love hearing that. So to your question about, what differentiates us from a chamber, I guess the first thing I'll say is how much I value chambers of commerce. We are fortunate in this region to have several thriving chambers, and I'm engaged with many of them, and proud to be partners with them. And we also share that we are the same organizational structure, what's called a 501c6, which is a type of nonprofit for business associations. I think what's unique about it, and I'll say, in the Venn diagram of business organizations, there's some overlap in what we do and chambers do. We put on events and we have opportunities for folks. What I'll share that I think is unique about this organization is that we find ourselves driving policy issues, driving development issues, driving business recruitment issues. Often they are things that are long arc projects, so they take years and years rather than who you're going to do business with the next week, or where you're going to have lunch, or where you're going to buy your supplies from, which are all important things. We spend a lot of times focused on what are the projects that are going to take 5 and 10 years. And I think we both mentioned things like coastal barrier protection. There's no sugarcoating that we live on the coast, and we also have been hit by hurricanes in the past and likely will get hit by them in the future. And so what are we doing as a region and the government to make investments in our capabilities to weather those storms and be prepared for the next one? And so things like coastal barrier protection, which would create a series of protection dunes in the region that would mitigate a storm surge, the way we design our flood mitigation tools, things like that are long-term projects. Transportation's another good example of roads and construction, things like that. And so we find ourselves bringing together key leaders and related to those types of topics, and bringing together industry, academia, nonprofit, and government players, and figuring out how we can work together to get those things done. And you need all of those players at the table to be successful. And so I think we are unique in that we specialize in bringing those players together with a focus on how do we do what's best for them.
That is great. Also, you have a lot of initiatives like Citizens for Space Exploration, which is one that I really love. Can you please elaborate on that one?
Yep, and I think you've been on that trip with us a number of times, so thank you. So we do have a group called Citizens for Space Exploration. They are a group that travels to Washington, D.C. and meets with members of Congress and their staff and talk about the importance of NASA to our community and to the country. And so we, on average, have in the ballpark of about 100 travelers. They come from across the country, so this is not just a Houston effort to talk about NASA's impact in the lives of the folks who travel with us and in the communities that they live in. And so we pre-schedule every meeting that we have while we're up there. We have meetings with elected or the members of Congress or their staffs and articulate that. And there are kind of a few unique perspectives that I think we bring to those conversations. The first is that generally we'll have somebody from industry who can talk about what's going on in the space industry and answer questions about the details of NASA's focus, what industry is working on, and kind of be an expert on what's going on in the space industry to educate the staff and members of Congress. We'll generally bring a student with us, and we recruit those students from across the country and invite them to join us and talk a little bit about how NASA work and their connection to NASA. And so often they've been interns at a company that's in the space business. They've done a project or engineering, capstone or class project that's been in support of a NASA effort. And so they have a tie to NASA and can articulate what their aspirational goal of working in the space industry, that, why that's important to them, and for those key leaders to understand that. And then we also bring community leaders with us. And so think a real estate agent who sells houses in the community that NASA is successful in, to people who work in this industry, or a mayor who has a lot of residents that are people that work in the space industry. And so we can articulate this sort of value proposition and why it's a good investment on behalf of the American taxpayer, and answer questions that they have. We go every May, so we're there right when there's a lot of activity happening, and we're getting geared up for this year's trip as we speak. And we find ourselves not just, I spent a couple minutes talking about space, but we get asked a lot about all sorts of things. And so we will share impacts of proposed legislation, of things that, ideas that people have related to any of the industry clusters, not as an advocacy effort, but a kind of understanding of, hey, if you did X, the impact would be Y in our community. And if that's good, we say, well, that'd be good. And if not good, we can call that too, and maybe figure out a path to how we could get an idea to a good executable concept and policy proposal. And so we enjoy having those types of discussions. And that, again, goes back to the benefit of our membership and having a prosperous region here in Bay Area, Houston.
This is fascinating. You also help community colleges. I remember that you have another organization inside BAHEP, and they can work together with companies. We as companies can support these guys. Also, you can elaborate on that. I believe that's a great initiative as well.
Yeah, well, I'm the son of two educators, and so feel very passionately about education, both K through 12, which we do a lot of work in supporting our local independent school districts here in the region. We have 8 school districts that are engaged with our organization. But then what you mentioned, community colleges and also universities, in which we're fortunate to have world-class universities and community colleges in our area. Community colleges in particular fill a very valuable space, and that, training people directly to go directly into the workforce. And so they have been just outstanding partners. Primarily we work with San Jacinto College, Alvin Community College, College of the Mainland, but then often find ourselves working with others in the region and beyond the region for workforce development programs. So us specifically, we have a grant through the Texas Workforce Commission that trains, it's in partnership with San Jacinto College. It's actually housed out at the Edge Center. It's on property at Ellington Field and at the Spaceport. And that program takes unemployed folks in the community and trains them in a capability for them to be an aerospace technician. And so things like composite tech, non-destructive testing, materials. And so they go through a 6-week certification class and finish that with a certification that will enable them to go get a job at the Spaceport or one of the aerospace companies. We put just short of 100 folks through the program so far. We have another 35 in the pipeline as we speak. And so it's been a remarkable partnership, and I can't say enough great things about our friends at San Jacinto College who are doing incredible work, not just in this space, but in all sorts of workforce development spaces that we have. And I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to our universities. The University of Houston Clear Lake has been a just fantastic partner. The University of Texas Medical Branch, UTMB, and Texas A&M at Galveston, who all have sort of unique capabilities that add a tremendous amount of value to our workforce and the success of our future businesses, because they're going to need these highly educated, extremely capable individuals that we're training here. They're doing a lot of great work, and we're honored to be on that journey with them.
Wow. So, Brian, this is one of our first holographic podcast. People will be watching this as a piece of history and just enjoying the first holographic podcast in human history. During one of my interviews, I asked Vint Cerf, father of the internet, what will be your message for the year 2053? You have been president of this organization for a little bit. You are very young. How do you see this organization in the future, and what's your message for the next president of BAHEP in so many years? Because they will be watching this as the first holographic podcast also to a president of BAHEP.
Well, I think my fun message would be remember Fernando de la Peña and his contributions to this technology, because I think, no kidding, I think you're on the leading and bleeding edge of what this technology can do in its future. And I just think it's awesome. And I'm so thankful that you are in our community. And so that would be my first thing for folks to remember, is that it's fun to take a moment and appreciate what we have and the types of things that are being created right now, and then look back 10 years from now when we take that in the context of what technology looks like at that time. I grew up in this region. I'm from here. I went to school here. Although I would like to think I'm well traveled, my life has been in this region, and now I raise my kids here. My wife has a medical practice here. I'm indebted to this community. And so I feel a sense of purpose and drive to serve and try and make this a better place for my kids and their kids beyond that. And so we all have a bit of responsibility to make sure that we're doing what we can to make sure that the future is bright, and that we have opportunity here, that we have business and jobs that are high paying, highly capable. And there aren't many places that can take a look at the types of thriving industry we have, and be able to have so much and be so fortunate. But at the same time, we can't take for granted the types of capabilities that we have right here, and we need to fight to protect them. We need to fight to help them be successful going into the future, because business dynamics change, regional dynamics change, and so there's a lot of work to do to advance those efforts. The other thing I feel compelled to say is how fortunate we are to have such a great team at Bay Area Houston on the staff, but then also our members. And we have a little bit over 300 very active members, and they are everyone a community leader in the truest sense of that phrase. And how fortunate I am to get to work with people like that. And Fernando, to be blunt, folks like you who are out here pushing technology and making the future happen today. It's just awesome to see, and thank you for your leadership there.
Wow, this is great. So, Brian, lastly, people may be interested to join to your organization. First of all, why they should join, and B, how can they join to your organization?
Yep. The how is, you can visit our website, bayareahouston.com, or reach out to us directly, and happy to have that discussion. Or swing by our office at 1150 Gemini here in Houston, which is a beautiful and newly renovated building that we are really enjoying this new office here. Our value proposition is about, there's a couple elements to it. One is this united purpose of benefiting all of us and working together as a community to advance our interests. The esprit de corps and camaraderie that goes with working with like-minded businesses, and frankly, the business opportunities that result from that, and advancing your individual business goals and what goes on with that. And we find ourselves getting into a lot of fascinating projects that I observe our members having a passion for, an ability to make an impact change and be part of something that's bigger. And it's a lot of fun. And we have some good events and good meals and good camaraderie along the way. But it really is a unique organization and what it's capable of getting done and what it's achieved over the years. So I look forward to having discussions with folks as they're interested in getting more involved with us. And we're going to continue being here every day doing good work, and really proud of the team that I get to lead to do that.
Thank you so much, Brian. It was a great interview. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Hopefully it's not the last interview. And everyone, thank you so much for watching, and see you next week. Thank you.